Welcome in, fans, to the Utah Lacrosse Report podcast. I'm your host, Tim Haslam. My guest today is Luke Christiansen, who began playing lacrosse at Cottonwood High School in the early 2000s. Christiansen is in his 7th year as the head coach at William Penn, which is an NAIA school in Iowa. We talk about his playing career, his coaching career, and also the one time that he coached the Spanish national team, which is pretty cool. Anyway, give it a listen. Hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to the show, Coach. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. Tim. Good to be talking with you again.
Yeah, it's been a minute. For those listening, Luke and I started a website many years ago called the Western Lacrosse Scout, and where we were covering scouting in the western part of the United States. Nothing like that still exists, Luke. You may be up for it later.
Actually, probably we should do that. That was a cool logo too. I almost completely forgot about that. I love that logo.
It was cool. It was, a guy on a horse with a lacrosse stick. You were coaching at SCAD at the time, I believe, and that's who one of the students designed it for us. Was that it?
I think I was at SVU at the time. I can't remember who designed it. It might have been. I had a guy who played at Middlebury who was my web guy when I ran that website for a while, and he might have been the one to do it. He was kind of the lacrosse go-to for anything web design.
Sure. Yeah, fun times though. Luke and I ran that site for a bit, and like I was saying off air, kind of lost track. I was thinking about the NAIA today, and I was like, oh man, I wonder if Luke's still coaching at William Penn, and sure enough, you are. So thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it. As I start every podcast, I always have to ask, when did you start playing lacrosse?
So I started playing lacrosse as a junior in high school at Cottonwood High, and so in 2001. And we had some guys from Brighton on our team. We had some guys from Murray, and a few other high schools. So it was actually, an okay, decent team at that time. I think my senior year, we were the last team to make it to, the state playoffs. We had a couple good upset wins, like we beat Juan Diego, we beat Skyline that year. But I think, unfortunately, kind of back in those days, once the good parent leadership leaves, it's hard for those, back when Utah was still club, it was hard for it to stay afloat if you didn't have the good parent infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, when I came home from my mission in 2006, I actually went and coached at Cottonwood in 2007. And so Carol Zuckerman was the one running the team at that time. And then, once her boys graduated, it definitely fell apart. And, who knows? Maybe we'll see Cottonwood back in the ranks one day. After Cottonwood, where did your path take you?
So I went down to Dixie, now Utah Tech, to play football before I went on my mission, and then came back from my mission to Argentina and realized I wanted to play lacrosse and football. So I went out to Southern Virginia and played football and lacrosse for 2 years while I was there. And then the last 2 years focused solely on lacrosse there at Southern Virginia. And that was a key time, and I guess lacrosse really getting its hooks into me since I, started a little bit later. That's when I, coaching kind of got into me. I was key on some leadership fronts there at SVU. Lacrosse was kind of struggling there at the time, and so there was a lot of things we put into play while I was there at SVU that kind of led to SVU still being around lacrosse-wise, and then actually thriving now. So we made a lot of inroads that led to some success, that we're seeing today there at SVU.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly SVU not an unfamiliar name here in the state. In fact, they're coming out to play Westminster this year.
Yeah, I saw that. I was excited about that.
Yeah, it's awesome. In the last podcast, we talked to Coach Avoy about that, and he said whenever Coach Lamb calls, you answer, and you pretty much do whatever he asks. So
that's very true.
Yeah, right. After your time at SVU, if I remember right, you went down to East Carolina. Is that right?
Yeah. So after SVU, so I played at SVU, and then I got my coaching start at Utah State, and I was the DC there. I was, preparing to go to law school, and I just wasn't quite sold on law school, and I had been enjoying coaching. So I got into coach, I got my first full-time gig at a boarding school back east, where I was teaching and coaching. And then from there went back to SU to help coach, and then had some different stops. I coached the Spanish national team, coached, East Carolina. And that ultimately led to William Penn, where I'm at now and where I've been the last 8 years, and started the program from scratch here at William Penn.
Yeah, and a couple different directions there. Talk to people about coaching the Spanish national team. First of all, how did it come about? And then second, what's like some tidbits maybe that people don't realize about coaching a national team?
Yeah, so it was, I think with the international gigs, it's really just about timing and luck. And they had a listing for it. I applied, the mission from Argentina paid off and being able to speak Spanish, and the guys are excited about being able to actually call plays and, run practices in Spanish. And it was a blast. Like, it's literally just, as far as coaching goes, it's, about as fun as it gets, because it's really just pure coaching. You're not dealing with, too much of the, other side of things. And, so I was able to coach at the 2014 Worlds there in Denver. That was a blast. And that was kind of a whirlwind because, I was hired pretty last minute. And so we kind of had to put everything together. Brought one of my former Utah State players over to help coach. Had a couple other coaches, from SVU come out and help, the guys that, spoke Spanish and well. So that was a blast. And then coached the Spanish national team at the 2016 Euros over in Hungary, and was able to do that. And, the one thing I would say is, like, the international game, probably a little bit more similar to MCLA in a lot of ways, as far as structure, the way things are run. Just a bunch of guys doing it because they love it. And, it was a privilege to, represent Spain for the few years that I got to, and would open any opportunity internationally that ever comes about. I would definitely take it. And anybody listening who has an opportunity to either play or help out internationally, I would encourage them to do it, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think the person that comes to mind is Ian Kadish, who played at Skyline and played with Israel on the national teams.
Actually, I ran into him at the 2016 Euros over there in Hungary. I actually ran into him there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And yeah, I could be wrong, but I don't think anyone's been on a national team from Utah in a bit here. But certainly lots of opportunities, right? Then they're only getting more and more as the sport expands. Real quick, that we could probably spend a whole podcast on just this topic alone. What's your opinion of the Olympics and having lacrosse in the Olympics?
It's really exciting. I think, it's a great growth opportunity. It's one of those things where it's like, we'll see what it actually does growth wise. But there's no negative to it. There's no negative. I actually was talking with the Spanish national team about getting back involved with them. But time commitment didn't quite allow, just now that I've got older kids and, full-time head coaching gig. But it's, there's no negatives to it. I know some people are like, well, with the sixes, they don't love it and things like that. But ultimately, just exposing more people to lacrosse is always a good thing.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think the whole national field or versus sixes is an interesting topic to kind of talk about with friends and stuff. But at the end of the day, I think you're exactly right. As long as we're getting lacrosse in front of people, it's exciting. I registered for tickets to the LA 28 Olympics, and so selecting lacrosse on that was pretty cool next to all those other sports. Pretty fun for sure. Talk to us about William Penn. I don't know that a lot of people in Utah are familiar with the NAIA. I know I'm not, and haven't been. So maybe talk to us just about that division of lacrosse and then William Penn itself. Yeah,
so NAIA, the best way that I describe it for people is it's somewhat of a combination of D2 and D3. Your athletics are more like Division II in that we provide scholarships. We can practice and play more, have more contact with the athletes. So the athletic side of things, the athletic rules, all those things aligns more with the Division II approach. Your academic aligns a little bit more with, kind of your, stereotypical D3 small private liberal arts schools. So it can be a pretty good niche for kids who want, a smaller, more intimate academic environment, but they want to have a lacrosse scholarship. They want to make their education, affordable, while still having, a really good high-end lacrosse experience. And so that's where I've enjoyed it. That's why I've stayed. I've had some opportunities to go D2, go D3, but like I really enjoy the niche. I really enjoy the guys that I get to recruit. I'm able to recruit a lot of Western guys. Our roster is about 70% Western. And so like, I really enjoy that. And, NAI, it's a growing, part of the lacrosse landscape. I've sometimes said it's, somewhat of the wild, wild west, or the last frontier, as far as lacrosse landscapes go, because it is kind of the, one of the lacrosse landscapes with the most opportunity for growth in the future, potentially. Right now, most of your NAI lacrosse teams are made up of Midwestern and Southeastern teams. So you have 3 conferences. You have the Heart of America, which is what it sounds like, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri. You have the Wolver Hoosiering Athletic Conference, which is teams in Michigan and Indiana primarily. And then you have the Appalachian Conference that's all South, teams in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, and so on. And it's a really fun league to be a part of. There's some really good top end talent, on the top end teams. Like the team that we got bounced by in nationals last year, they had a Ohio State, transfer, a goalie. They had a former Air Force commit in Colorado Mesa transfer at attack. So like there's really good players, and it's just unfortunately like our biggest struggle, our biggest hurdle, when recruiting in NAI is literally just the stigma or just familiarity. Of lots of kids they want to go D2, they want to go D2, their clubs are pushing them D2. But once we get kids here to our campus and they see what we're doing, how we're doing it, they see, our brand new, fully decked out locker room, our brand new indoor complex. And they're like, oh, wow, this is nicer than all the D2s or D3s I've visited so far. And so it's really that just stigma and familiarity. Switching over to William Penn itself. So I was hired back in 2018 to build this program from scratch. Like, I think being a Westerner, and being a Westerner within lacrosse, like I got into coaching to build. I got into coaching to, really be a part of building programs, kind of that, I guess, pioneer spirit. And, so that's what attracted me here, and, got here and just kind of went to work. We're in a non-lacrosse hotbed type of area. And so I leaned on, kind of what I knew, what I was passionate about, and that was, the West. And so, like I said, we built the roster, pretty much built on Western players. Like the last 2 years, we've led the country in All-Americans in the NAI, and half of those guys have been guys from out West, Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, Colorado. We haven't had any Utah Americans yet, so hopefully I can change that here soon. But so it's just been a really rewarding experience of building that program from scratch, and just seeing it grow from nothing, right? So where you grow from, it's literally just an idea, to now we have this great tangible product, and it's rolling. And now we're at the point where, hey, like it's about keeping that standard of, okay, we're going for that 4th conference championship in a row. How do we maintain that standard? And so it's a really fun time to be coaching, where I think we've got our best team culture we've had, maybe our most complete team, and just new challenges within coaching. And so it's a really fun time, here at William Penn.
Yeah, totally. And as we're talking, you're on the road at Sandstorm recruiting. What are you looking for in a kid, to come play at William Penn?
Yeah, so there's there's a couple different, avenues, right? There's no perfect answer to that. The generic thing, and I know this might sound corny, is like we want kids that want to be here. We want kids that are bought into our culture. You know, I think especially now that we've established a winning culture, like that's the big thing. Like we really are heavy. Like when we don't do prospect days, you know, we don't do like big visit days. You know, most of our visits are pretty intimate where, you know, we'll bring in one kid, maybe two kids in a day, like if they're coming with a friend, so they can go lift with the team, they can go, you know, meet with professors, I can go have lunch, you know, or dinner with them and get to know them and their parents, and making sure they're a fit. And, you know, that kind of weeds itself out pretty easily. Like, you know, if I hear back from the guys like, oh yeah, the guy, you know, he didn't really seem like he was enjoying, or, you know, whatever it may be, hearing back from the guys, it really helps in that recruiting process. You know, it's kind of, I guess, some of the nuts and bolts of what we're looking for. We look for a lot of engineering guys. Engineering is a program here that is a really strong degree program here at William Penn. A lot of our guys have had a ton of success in the engineering field, and, you know, going into their careers here. It's really, you know, really well respected program, and so we get a lot of those guys. Nursing is another one that we try to target. New media, you know, so those are some of kind of the niche programs here at the school that we really try to target and that we've done really well with, especially too, since like engineering and nursing, there's a lot of schools that won't even let guys do those degree programs, you know, for lacrosse. And so we really like to, you know, highlight those, and our school does a really good job of being accommodating with those guys. And we found too, like, you know, when we are bringing a kid, you know, from Utah or bringing a kid from Washington, Oregon, when they're coming out to be, you know, to be in the engineering program, to be in the nursing, like they, you know, when they really know what they want academically, it only helps our retention rate. And, you know, we've done a really good job these last few years of really dialing that in, of where our retention's, you know, at a really great spot. Our academics are in an amazing spot. Like, we're really proud of what we've done. You know, like the last 2 years, we haven't had a single ineligible kid. And so, you know, we've done a really good job of dialing in kind of our academic, you know, monitoring and protocol. You know, and so, you know, the thing that I really love, and I think why I continue to be in coaching, instead of, you know, maybe going admin or what have you, is, you know, the ability to mentor and help develop guys. You know, so like, it's exciting for me, like, hey, when I can snag a kid where, hey, you know, maybe he wasn't the best high school, you know, student, you know, maybe he was a 2.6, 2.7 guy. So for example, our leading scorer from Colorado, you know, he was in that range, but he knew he wanted to be engineering. So he knew, like, hey, like, if I go to, you know, a bigger school or whatever with engineering, like, I might struggle. I might get washed out really quickly. You know, so we brought him in here. You know, he has over 3.5 GPAs, really bought into, you know, the academic protocol and the rigor that we have, and really bought into the engineering program. And so now, you know, he had 100 points last year, and, you know, so he's on his path to being an All-American, and also, you know, going to have a really good engineering career when he's done. And so that's, you know, what I love about coaching. And, you know, so I love to look for kids like that, where, you know, we can really help them develop and grow.
No, that's perfect. You know, the other thing you mentioned, you know, you mentioned all those degrees and the ability to get those, which is obviously important. One was new media. And I think you said that because are you not also a photography professor at the school?
So I teach photo as well. So, you know, kind of quick explanation on that. I had a brief sabbatical from coaching, you know, for about 2 years, where I worked in commercial photography. And I did my, you know, master's at Savannah College of Art and Design in photography. And I just recently finished my MFA in image and text from Cornell University there in New York. And so once I win a national championship, you know, I might just shift purely over to teaching photo. But got to get those 100 career wins here in the next year or two, and get that national championship before I can focus just on photo.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's really cool. You know, I don't know that there's many college coaches out there who also are teaching classes at the school. Is that a common thing in NAIA?
No, I don't think so. I'm the only coach within, you know, the NAIA lacrosse that I know of that does that. And that's more of a preference for me, so I can kind of have my cake and eat it too. I just teach one class a semester, and for me, it just is kind of like a nice, refreshing palate cleanser, twice a week where I can go and I can just dive into photo, keep myself kind of a little bit more plugged into the photo world than I would be otherwise, and it kind of motivates me to be producing, some photo projects and keep myself a little bit more sharp there in that realm. But yeah.
That's awesome. We're actually hosting a end of year photo contest for the Utah Lacrosse Report. Could I get you to be a judge?
Absolutely. No, that I would have a blast with that. And a plug for our new media program. One of our alums that I'm really proud of, he's a kid who came in, he was LSM for us, and he did the new media program, and he just got hired on full time about a month or two ago at the University of Iowa as one of their videographers. And he's doing great stuff with them. And he was with the Iowa Cubs, the minor league team before them, so he's doing great things with them.
Oh, that's awesome. You don't have to convince me of the beauties of new media, because I definitely understand it. So that's very cool. Coach, thanks for joining the podcast today. I really appreciate it. Thanks for giving us a look into William Penn and the NAIA and how that all works. I guess I do have one more question. How does the playoff structure work in the NAIA?
Yeah, so it's an 8-team playoff. You have 3 auto bids, so the 3 conferences each have an auto bid. And then the remaining 5 are at large. And then there's a selection committee, that has, a range of criteria that decides those last 5. And it's at a host site. So the last 2 years it was at Savannah. We were fortunate enough to go there to Savannah the last 2 years. And this coming year, it's going to be in Alabama, somewhere around Huntsville, Alabama. But the playoffs are pretty fun and a good experience for the guys.
Yeah, definitely. And, we'll be rooting for you all the way from Utah, believe it or not. And we're excited for that.
Yep.
Fans listening, if you want to catch more and learn more about William Penn, it's statesmanathletics.com. You can see the schedule, look at the roster, all of that fun stuff. Any other things you want to talk about or tell us about, Coach?
So for this coming year, one of our starting senior defensemen, Bradley Howell from Clearfield High School. So he's our main Utah kid representing right now, and it seems like we've always had our most success with deep holes here at William Penn. That's when most of our Utah kids have come from. Kind of some of those football guys that didn't play club ball but were really athletic, and then we can develop them once they get here.
I love it. That's awesome. From a fellow deep hole myself, I'll accept that answer. That works.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. And, we'll be cheering for the Statesman from Utah, and best of luck.
Thank you so much, Tim. Great to catch up.